in the subject matter jurisdiction of the neighborhood council. So if it's not on the agenda, then they can comment on it in a separate area, a separate posted place on your agenda that's reserved for public comment. The public has a right to criticize you, the right to criticize your policies, the right to criticize how you carry them out. And they can do that freely during public comment, or they can criticize your decisions or or what they believe are going to be your actions when they're talking about each individual agenda item. They have the right to videotape or audio tape the meetings, and they have a right to videotape the individuals at the meeting because it's a public meeting. They don't have the right to disrupt your meetings by doing that. So the videotaper cannot come and stand in front of everybody and one by one take your picture while the meeting is going on, because that's disruptive to the meeting. The neighborhood councils can designate an area where they make available for people who want to do video recording so that it is not going to disrupt the flow of the meeting, but still allows those people the opportunity to capture whatever is discussed and whatever is said by people at the meeting. When the neighborhood council videotapes a meeting, such as they do here, the public has a right to view a copy of it if they request to do so. They don't have a right to just come in willy-nilly at any point in time and say, I want to see it now. They have to make a request, and they can have a copy of the videotape made for them at their expense. Or if somebody from the neighborhood council has the time, they can allow them to view it. But that is getting into Public Records Act, which is a little bit off from what our topic is tonight, but the public does have a right to view the videotapes.
Who owns that? Who owns that videotape?
If a member of the public videotapes the meeting, that is that person's video. If the neighborhood council videotapes the meeting, then that is the property of the neighborhood council. And the neighborhood council is required to produce it pursuant to any Public Records Act request.
Let's talk for a moment, since I chair the meetings, about what the public is not entitled to do. And you talked about disruption. My understanding is the public is not entitled to make motions such as point of clarification, point of order, any other type of parliamentary motions. That's reserved for board members since it is a board meeting. Is that correct?
Yes.
Can you repeat that, paraphrase it?
You want to repeat it?
I'll repeat.
No, you have the microphone.
You want to come stand next
Sure.
to me, because I won't be able to repeat it. I've been working all day.
All right. My understanding is that parliamentary procedure, including motions, is reserved for board members, so that members of the public who wish to make a point of order, who wish to ask for a point of clarification, or any other type of parliamentary motion, that is reserved for the directors, since it is a board of directors meeting.
Yes. All right. The public, go ahead.
I didn't understand, specifically as far as the word In other words, if a stakeholder asks for clarification on an issue that's being discussed, if I understand your response, that that's a disruption, they're not allowed to do it. However, previously you said that the public must be allowed to comment before action is taken. So is the public not allowed to ask for clarification on something that's being discussed if they don't understand it?
The public is allowed to have comment on the action or whatever it is that's before the board. So, go ahead, Darren.
I think that what the question is there's a segment during every public meeting where members of the public are allowed to go up and provide their comment. It's during that time that members of the public are allowed to provide the comment or input into the meeting. They can't just sit from the audience and say, point of order, or I want to make an amended motion. That's a disruption to the meeting. They're not members of the board to participate in that manner. What your board or what your neighborhood council should do, I don't know if you want me to come up here. What you guys should do is, as a suggestion, at the beginning of your meetings, just have a script that you're in the practice of reading off to everybody when they come in, so that you can just tell them, hey, welcome to our meeting. These are the rules for our meeting. We have our speaker cards up here on this table. I'm going to call I'll get to each agenda item on the list. I think Melvin brought a copy of the script that you guys can use it. And all of the chairs who are doing this, you can modify that script. One of the aspects of this is, you guys are used to coming to your meetings all the time, so you know how the process works. The problem is you get some people in here sometimes who necessarily don't know how it works, so that's why there might be confusion. And I know it gets boring to read it all the time, but I strongly recommend you do it because it puts people on, it tells people, it says, welcome to our meeting. We're under the restrictions of the Brown Act. If you talk to us, that's why we won't be able to take up the issues you have. If you want to provide comment, the method by which you do that is you fill out that speaker card in the back, and then you hand it up here. If you don't want to put your name on it, just indicate in some way. And whenever I go through the items on the agenda, I'll call you up when these items are to be read. In this way, you're giving people the structure and understanding of how the meeting is to operate, and you kind of halt that type of disruption. And even things like at one point in time, I was also in the role. I served on a commission as well. And one of the things that I found really helpful, and this was it was an area planning commission. So you guys all know how contentious those meetings can be, right? People are yelling up and down, screaming like crazy. What you do is you set the parameter for the meeting at the beginning, and you tell them, we're going to treat everybody with respect. There's not going to be any yelling or hollering, and you set the groundwork so everybody knows the rule coming in. Because if you just walk into it and you're kind of clueless about, well, what am I supposed to do here? Then it turns into a zoo. But if you put those parameters for everybody, and it's like, oh, okay, now I know the rules. I'm not going to curse, spit, bite, I'm going to behave. I know I'll have my chance to speak when I have the chance to come up there. And it gives everybody that option to know, this is how I do it, this is how I participate. So I'm going to recommend that all of you do that at your meetings and at your committee meetings from now on. And I know Melvin brought a script for you tonight, and you can modify that to help you guys out.
What's are there civil and criminal punishment for people that disrupt meetings?
Yes. Well, there's definitely criminal.
Okay.
They can, they can. But if you are having trouble with people that are disrupting your meetings, work closely with the lowest. Okay. The first step is not to throw the person out of the meeting. There's mechanisms for addressing the concern. Most of the time, people that are disrupting the meeting, they just simply don't understand the rules or the parameters for what they're doing. So you make that known to them. If that's not helping, and for some neighborhood councils that doesn't help, they have to kind of escalate it a little bit. So then you put out the notice. There's a penal code notice that you put on your door, so that when they walk in, it says, if you disrupt this meeting, the police will be called and you'll be taken out.
all right? So then they see that and they're like, oh, okay, I realize that that can happen, all right? If somebody is disrupting your meeting, do not in any situation ever, ever put your hand on that person, okay? If you think it's a situation that requires the police to come, then call the police. There are things you can do even before you get to that point, okay? If somebody is trying to take over the meeting, they're not letting you talk, then what the board does is get up and walk out. 5-minute recess. You know, we're gonna come back. And people will like, okay, let the emotions calm down. All right, we'll re-adjourn in 5 minutes. You come back in. They wanna jump up and down and scream, we'll adjourn again, you know? Usually with the adjourning, that usually helps. That really kind of, sometimes things just need to calm down a little bit before you really get to the point where you're throwing somebody out. That's not the first step that I recommend for people, because, you know, you can be really passionate about something, you know, and it's like everybody doesn't have a perfect day all the time, all right? You know, give a little, you know, hey, okay, I know you're passionate about this, but let's be respectful of everybody here. And you know, you can kind of play that with the, you know, you get that understanding with the people that you're dealing with and address it in that way.
What did you
Thank
do
you.
with people who were materially false all the time? Like they would make a claim and it was materially false on its face. Like they misperceived something. And you know, everybody misperceives. We all do. That's a human condition.
Well,
What do you do in that situation?
Well, it's up to your board to decide, okay? It can be something as simple as, okay, well, I disagree with the statement you've made. Here, you know, you can say that in your individual capacity. I disagree, that statement's incorrect. Next, thank you for your comment. Wait, I disagree with that statement. Next comment, okay? If your board wants to put out something more affirmative, you know, we want a resolution. We want a resolution to say what we think happened. You know, this is the board's statement of what occurred, period. It's all signed, the board has all agreed to it. So it's kind of like your own little press release. If you feel that it's something that important that needs that resolution, but most of the time you just tell people, like, you know, if they're coming up there and saying something, the best response to give to people is, you know, thank you for your comment, next speaker. I mean, there isn't any need to really get into an argument with people. I mean, what, you know, you're making the decision on the issue. You don't have to persuade them to your point of view. It's like you've evaluated the facts that, you know, what you think, and you've taken into consideration. Perhaps in giving your reason why you're voting away, you can say that, you know, well, I disagree with this fact because I know this, so therefore that's why I'm going to vote this way. So you can qualify it in any number of ways to show your disagreement with some type of issue that's been made, while still doing it in a very, you know, civil and understanding type of way. You know, people don't necessarily disagree with, you know, seeing that somebody disagrees with them. Like, you know, you guys may all disagree. You're all going to disagree with me at one point in time. Okay, it's not anything personal. I mean, it's not. I'm going to try to give you the best advice I can all the time. All right. You sometimes you'll like it, sometimes you'll hate it. I'm still here. I'm still going to give you the advice. All right, and the same thing with you. You know, feel free to approach us. It's not any you know, big issue. So, and the same with, and that's kind of the same thing that in working with members of the public that you come across. You can say, you know, well, we agree to disagree on that, and you can try to, because you do have to work with the public. It's part of the partnership. It's one of the problems. You have a partnership with the community. You have a partnership with city council, and it's a careful political, you know, balance beam that you got to walk at times. I don't know if there was more. Is it?
Cindy's got something, and I got something.
Okay. So the public can speak at the beginning of the meeting during public public comment. And then also, they can also speak on each agenda item if they fill out a speaker card, correct?
Correct.
Right.
If they refuse to speak, if they don't want to fill out a speaker card, still let them speak.
Right.
But
okay.
they speak during that comment, during the public comment
Right.
portion.
So they have a chance to speak at the public comment, and then, let's just say agenda A.
1, 2,
They
3,
can-
4, 5.
Right, they can
Good.
still speak at each,
Yes.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Yes.
I'm going to go back one section to that point of clarification on disruption. It was clarified that a public stakeholder could not make a point of order. Robert's Rules of Order says anyone can make a point of order. but I guess that's anyone on the board, I suppose, is what is inferred when it says that.
It talks about the assembly.
Yeah.
Members of the
I'm
assembly.
going to be using the specific example because your previous clarification was from a specific example. If in fact there's a motion put forth by a standing committee that did not agendize their meeting in accordance with the Brown Act, and the stakeholder brings that to their attention before they take the vote, is that being disrupted?
Well, it depends on how it's brought to their attention. You could
That's
cross
the way I
you
said
could
it
cross
to
the
you.
line about
That's
it
the
being
way I said it to
disruptive.
you now, would that be disruptive?
Yeah, you can
To make that point.
Well, it depends if you're speaking during the
During the
portion of
appropriate time.
during the appropriate time, and you're saying, yeah, that's not really a disruption.
Okay, thank you.
And the appropriate time is during public comment.
Right, when you've been called, or
Not-
not when you're sitting there in the audience and you blurt it out. It's
Right.
like, I have a comment about that agenda item, I'm gonna fill out my card, and then you come up and you say, you know, you didn't, I don't believe that you've agendized this properly. I don't think you guys should take action on it. There's a concern under the Brown Act. And so they all look at it and they say, oh, thank you. Thank you for your comment. And then the board will evaluate it. Do you think that just, and part of we're gonna do some exercises, hopefully soon too, where we do some agenda writing, because that's a kind of important piece. And hopefully I have all the committee chairs here too.
You have all but one.
Okay, good. All right.
Okay, so the last thing that I want to talk about, just briefly, is, because we've already kind of gone over it, is the penalties for violating the Brown Act. These penalties can be assessed against the neighborhood council, or it can be assessed against an individual board member. So you have to be careful, especially in considering the situations that we have presented here with this neighborhood council. A violation of the Brown Act can subject the board members to misdemeanor penalties. You can be charged with a crime, you can be convicted of a crime, and you can be forced to pay the consequences. If that happens, then you will be required to hire an attorney and defend yourself against those charges. The city will not represent you in those charges. Charges that may be brought against you will more than likely be brought by the district attorney's office, even though the city attorney's office usually does the misdemeanor crime prosecution in the city of Los Angeles. And there's a variety of reasons for that, but the most obvious is that it would probably present a conflict of interest for the city attorneys to prosecute somebody from the neighborhood council for a violation of the Brown Act. So the DA's office gets on board with that. Now, if they charge you with that, they have to be able to show not only that you had a meeting and didn't post it, or whatever the violation of the Brown Act is, but they have to show that you intended to deprive the public of information that you knew or had reason to know the public was entitled to. So that's a standard that the prosecutor will have to demonstrate to a jury and show that you violated that knowingly and willingly, and that you had a specific intent. So it could happen. We don't want to see it happen, And so we ask you that if there's any questions regarding Brown Act issues, Brown Act violations, is this going to be, is it not going to be, what can we do, how can we remedy it? Please call me or please send me an email, preferably an email, about whatever the issue is.
What is the likelihood of that? I mean, we're advisory. We don't get paid.
It doesn't matter.
Our influence
When
is
you
very
sign up,
minimal.
when you sign up as a board member, you accept the risk.
I understand that, and I just said, what is the likelihood?
Remote.
Well, I don't know.
I mean,
I don't know what the likelihood is of that, because that depends on a different agency. That depends on the DA's office as to whether or not they feel like they want to take the time to look into it or not.
well, I mean, we don't have that kind of, I mean, in the context of things, you're talking about at least 5 people, because one person could not cause the kind of problems you're talking about and then go to jail. I mean, I don't have any kind of power on this board that my influence would so sway the councilman, who I imagine that would be the person who I would ultimately try to contact or sway in anything. So, and there's at least 10 other neighborhood councils in our area, and they're gonna have different opinions, so anything that we advise, it's like they say, you take that with a big grain of salt. I mean, you guys have come down here and you've laid down these big rules about all this and that, and you know, how to run the meetings, and we've actually been very good. Everything you've said, we have been doing for years. We have not violated anything. And yet, you come down here and try to lay the big scare tactics on it. I really don't appreciate it, especially when I see the city council, they only post once, and they 4 million people. We only got maybe 200,000-300,000, and we got to post all around the place, and this is basically a residential neighborhood. It's really hard to do all these postings and all this stuff. You have us jump through the hoops. We don't get any money. Any money we get here, we give it away in the forms of grants and everything else to the community. We take time and money out of our own pockets to make sure that a lot of these things happen. So, you know, I just feel like you guys are being a little bit disingenuous when you come down here and then start laying the law down to us about violations. We've all passed the Brown Act every year. We did the same thing with the budget. We follow the rules better than you do. I guarantee you. And I can tell you, council members don't do as good as we do.
Eric, real men don't whine. Let's move on.
But I'm just letting you know, I'm feeling a little put upon down here.
And let me say this to you. Everybody appreciates the work that individual board members do on behalf of their community.
Not everybody.
Not everybody, no.
Okay, everybody in my
Every time I
office,
turn around, you guys
Okay.
are trying to cut our budgets and everything, you don't appreciate anything.
everybody in my office.
I do not agree.
And the reason that we are here, myself, Darren, and Melvin, the reason that we are here is because we're your attorneys. And we are charged with trying to keep you from having to deal with any troubles.
We don't have anything.
Are you
Move
on
on.
board?
Yes.
Okay. I
I've
just
been
wanted
board
to make
since the
sure.
inception.
Okay.
But
And you've received a copy of the letters that have been distributed?
Yes, I've
Okay.
seen those letters.
All right.
And they're
That's
full of
why
crap.
we're here. That's okay. The point is, we're here, that's your point of view.
That's my point of view.
You can have that point of view.
Thank you.
But we're here to help all of your board and all your board members avoid any issues, because we don't want to see anything develop from that, all right? This is an educational opportunity for all of you. It's our best effort to try to assist you and improve your operations. There's always room for learning. And I hear your argument. Yes, we're volunteers, we don't have money, whatever it is. You're making the argument, it doesn't matter, the Brown Act applies to you. I mean, it's the same thing. It's like, well, I don't think there's going to be a policeman between here and Laughlin, so I'm going to floor it. All right? You can't. You've got to comply with the rules and the law. I mean, it may be harder for you to do it because you're a volunteer.
Did you hear me
but,
say that we have always followed the Brown
no,
Act?
I heard excuses. I heard excuses.
It's not an excuse. We do.
I heard excuses in the sense of, we're volunteers, this is really hard for us to do. Our goal is here to try to get you guys to improve, all right? So that way we don't even have these issues being raised again. We don't want to see these issues repeated or re-raised again. And we want to give all of you the knowledge base so that when you do see the concern, you can recognize it and put an immediate halt to it. Because nobody else on this board is going to come back anyone else whenever they're facing a prosecution. So you got to make sure that you are acting in your own interest. If you don't believe that there's a great likelihood of things that will happen, then all I can tell you is we've given you guys the tools to try to move forward. We're making ourselves available for you so that you can use our resources to help you out. But that's all. We're here to help you. It's not to come down on you. It's not to tell you that you've done everything bad. We haven't made anything about you doing things bad in the past. We're here to move you forward and understand what things we can do to improve. So that way, look, the thing with the Brown Act, the thing with a lot of these rules are, when somebody disagrees with the substantive position that you've taken, the easiest way to unravel everything you've done is to take it apart procedurally, okay? So if you've taken a position on a project that I don't like, right, I can stop you in your tracks if you don't comply with the Brown Act. And it's the easiest thing to be able to comply with. Remember, the Brown Act is just about getting that notice out there. So if we get that notice out there and we do that appropriately, then we're not ever going to have an issue. And you have defeated that argument from somebody trying to come in and bring your board to a halt.
How long has the city taken the position that they won't defend individual neighborhood councils or neighborhood councilmen? How long has the city had that? Has it always been that way? Where they've never?
It's pretty much always been that way, because when there is a criminal charge that is filed, that's something that you'll be addressing in your personal capacity. So we're here to help. We're here to help you guys as a board or a body, and we'll do the best there. So.
Yeah, just to clarify, for a Los Angeles councilman, if they're ever accused of anything, they get the full force of the city attorney,
No.
or do they not?
No.
It's a personal matter.
Yeah,
for them as well.
they go out and get their own attorneys.
So the rules apply pretty much to us and higher levels.
Yeah. Sometimes it can be tricky. Okay, like I'm not going to say Look, not in every case. If it does happen, you obviously raise it with us. We can evaluate whether there's some type of protections that we can provide. The test, or what it's evaluated under, is course and scope of authority. So sometimes you might see issues where they would come in and protect a city council member. Same thing where they might come in and protect you if it's within that course and scope of your duties, all right? If it's something that you're clearly acting outside that course and scope of your duties, then you have an issue. So that evaluation is made, and from there you kind of move forward. But as a general rule, okay, the exception is it can happen. There might be some type of protections that are offered. But as a general rule, no, whenever you're faced with a situation involving a criminal prosecution, that usually is intentional criminal conduct on behalf of an individual, and that's something that falls outside the course and scope of your duties, which is why the city doesn't indemnify. But there can be other gray areas too.
And let me address something that you said. You said, but we're listening to one person. And it's not that we're listening to one person, it's that the DA's office has put this neighborhood council on their radar screen. And for whatever reason that is, those people are listening to somebody. And when that happens, it's our job to come in and try to help you not get into trouble. So that's why we're here. Did we have to come here? No. We didn't have to come here. But maybe you don't find it helpful because you seem to know a lot of the Brown Act rules. But maybe new board members don't. Maybe not everybody has read the Brown Act, and
The
maybe
guy
not.
making the complaint don't know the Brown Act.
And that may or may
I'm
not
gonna say what I'm
be.
gonna say.
But
Hey,
But if you
I'm gonna
have-
say what I wanna say. He's made his complaint, I'm gonna make my complaint. My complaint is you got one disgruntled stakeholder who doesn't like the residential floor plan because it bothers him and his business. That's all it is. And I'm telling you, it's bull. Everything he's complained about, he was wrong. I mean, even the district attorney's office told him, hey, what are you talking about? This does not comply with the Brown Act, over and over and over again. So when you guys come down here, and yes, I appreciate you helping us. I appreciate you explaining this. There was some minute things that you did clarify, but they really don't pertain to us because we haven't had that problem.
great.
So when you come down here and sometimes you sound a little heavy-handed, yeah, I do feel offended because I work my butt off for this neighborhood council. I will continue to work my butt off for this neighborhood council. And just because somebody is sore because their business might be injured by what we decided we wanted to do for the betterment of our community, I'm going to state that every damn time, and that's my feeling about it.
Okay.
Thank you.
I want to go completely
I'll turn it
off.
over to you now. I'm done.
All right. Listen, any more questions?
I have a question.
I think there was Aaron in the.
Yeah, let me have a real quick question. So do you recommend that neighborhood councils get board insurance?
Well, no, because that's a civil issue and you're covered under the indemnification protections of the city. So the board itself is covered as an entity. If something happens, it's insured through the city.
Okay, so going back to what we were all talking about earlier, I understand the numbers for minimum number of people that can get together without it being a meeting from the board. And I also understand what you're saying about we should just be extra careful and not have anybody get together. But what about for a committee? Take a committee that we have 5 people on, and let's just call it standing committee. So we've got 5 people on the committee. The quorum for that committee would be 3, and so it gets us down to a minimum majority of the minimum quorum of that committee is 2 people.
It depends on what your rules are for your committee.
Well, yeah, that's how it
Usually
works.
committees kind of still stick at majority of the committee.
Our
So you're
committees are
still at-
majority of the president, so that's present, if it's a
Okay.
quorum. So we get down to
So
two people who could conceivably sway a vote on the committee. So does this actually drill down that, when you were talking about a committee as opposed to the board, does it drill down that
Yes.
far into the committee?
Yes, it is.
And does that involve
And this is a good question, yeah, because you do have to remember that.
Can you paraphrase that question?
Yeah, the question was really is, do you have the serial communication concern at the committee level as well? Because here was the example, we used it with the board, and we did our number here where we could show the concern. And the issue is, on a committee, when you have that smaller number, that you can still have these same issues kind of facing you or impacting you, and yes, that's true. So you do have to watch out for having those communications, especially with fellow committee members on issues that might be coming before the committee, because you can easily run into the problem with the Brown Act at the committee level.
So in that case, with a 5-member committee, really, that you can't have 2 people, and the key here is discuss. those two people can go to another meeting and listen to a presentation, even if it's not a public meeting. But you can listen to what other people have to say, even if it's within subject matter jurisdiction of that committee, as long as those two people don't discuss between themselves an item that may
Yeah,
come
but what
before
is,
their
let me
committee.
ask a more general question, because I may need to get a sense of, what committee are we talking about?
Well,
Planning,
I'm
land
chair
use,
of
or-
Plum.
Plum, okay, so you guys have a lot of work. You have a lot of work to try to go out and figure out and gather. So you're trying to figure out how those committee members can kind of operate to go out and do the work of the committee behind the scenes. Yeah, and you're gonna be stuck by just having most cases, you know, two of the people doing the, but you can assign it out too. So you can say, you know, you're gonna work on this project over here, you two will work on this project over here, and come back to the committee with the information that you gather. Once we all get in the room, then we can all discuss it.
Well, two is the magic number in this scenario. So one is the most you can have in, you know, one place discussing with themselves. Okay,
I'm
five
sorry,
people,
because I
five
thought you
people
said-
on the committee.
Oh, and because you do, because you.
Five
you
people
do
on the
it
committee, 3 are a
So you-
minimum quorum, so two
Two.
become a majority of that.
Okay, sorry,
minimum
I'm sorry,
quorum.
I'm sorry, you're correct. You've kind of effectively precluded the ability then at that level for having subcommittees. So you're not really gonna have
Well, right,
subcommittees go out. Individuals will go out, find information, and come back to
But
the committee and report on issues.
Can 2 or even 3 of those people go to a meeting at maybe a city function that only neighborhood council board members are
Absolutely.
invited to?
Absolutely.
Or to the police department where only, you know, people they've invited can go to, or to a education seminar?
As
Or
long
to
as
listen
they're
to a
not.
presentation on a new development that's coming in, sit there, listen to the presentation. The public is not invited, but not have discussions amongst themselves.
Usually the public always is invited to those types of events.
Well,
If
they-
it's not a public
Yeah,
event,
we
then
get,
let us.
let's say one of the presentations of the police department. They won't let a homeless person with no pants on come into the meeting.
Well, but it's
So, I
still
mean,
a
there's,
public, okay,
there's.
see,